Um, I think Pranesh has this odd thing of waiting for the next page, but of Zoom invitations. But we can just get going now, if that's okay with you guys. So Pranesh, hi everybody. I'm Alex McKenzie. I'm an elderly pediatrician, part of the furniture here. Pranesh called me yesterday saying, "Hey, you bike to work. You would be perfect to introduce." This is the deep thinking that got Pranesh his job. You bike to work. You'd be perfect to introduce Richard and Curtis, because he has a pedicure. I don't know. He's at the pediatric retreat. Anyway, it's a delight to introduce two good friends of mine, Curtis Lavoie, who is a universally beloved, cheerful emergency room doc who since 2010 has had the environmental, what do you call it, Curtis? The green team?
Team sustainability team. Green
yes.
Team.
Trips off the dock. And Curtis and I race each other on our bikes into work on occasion. And then Richard Webster, who is a polymath, who is, if there's an interesting, innovative thing going on a Zoom call or something, Richard's usually there. But because of poor executive executive function, has agreed to be the head of the CRU recently, and may have the scars at this stage to show for it, but thank you very much for doing that, as well as having over $7 million of grants, et cetera, and over 60 publications, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very pleased to have you two present. I want to give you a flavor quickly. This is the first half hour of my talk, but I sent them a cranky email saying, the planet's going to be okay. It's us it's us that's going, don't worry about the planet. It was a cranky email, went on for about 3 pages. Curtis sent an email back. "Dear honored guest, thank you for your feedback concerning a talk we haven't even given yet. Please note we're receiving more than the usual number of cranky emails. Your message is important to us, and we will be answered before the end of the universe. Yours untruly, press 5 for more options." So if there's a slight tension between me and Curtis today, you understand why. Okay, make us laugh, make us cry, guys.
Okay. All right, I am on. So thanks, Alex. Thanks for the introduction. So basically, hello, kids need a planet. This is actually a line I just heard a month ago. We had a visiting pharmacist from San Jose Hospital who's here to give a presentation on greening the pharmacy. Sad that Ariane couldn't be here today, but basically they got a lot of great things going on in the pharmacy. But I love this line. She said, "Hello, kids need a planet." And I thought that just summed it up perfectly. So I wanted to bring that to the title. Just push this forward like this. How am I doing this? Okay, just click. Okay, good. So the objectives today, kind of bring us up to speed on what's the state of the world. Explain the carbon footprint again, but CHEO, let's talk about a lot about the things that we've been really working to do to reduce the carbon footprint of CHEO. I think that you'll be surprised, actually, a lot of things, and Richard's going to talk a lot about that. And then I want you to be able to list 3 things that you're going to do as a result of this talk that you to really help us fight the big fight, change the course of climate change, especially with respect to healthcare. Oh, thanks to Alex, actually, 10 years ago this month, we actually had Alex was our guest debater with the other Alex. It was the big 2 Alexes, and we had an amazing time. I don't know if anybody who can remember who won. Alex, do you remember who won? Yes, he would say so.
But no, actually,
it was really surprising, actually, because I had a little clap meter thing, and I held it up for the clapping, see who won, and it was an exact tie. I don't know if you remember, Alex. Yeah, both of you had 79 points. It was quite a fabulous time.
Out of a possible 1,000 or something. Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so state of the planet. We are, as of February, up 1.73 degrees. I don't know if you remember that there was a lot of talk at Paris about trying to keep it under 1.5 degrees, and there's a lot of concern about passing the 1.5 degrees as we head forward. This has been warm winter. We are definitely up a lot, partly because of El Nino. So next year might be a little cooler. Just a bit of good news that way, but we are definitely soaring past that 1.5 degrees in the future. if you remember from my previous talks, Mauna Loa is a station in Hawaii that really has been instrumental in monitoring carbon dioxide levels. They set up a monitoring on top of the volcano, I guess, whereby we've been able to document the steadily increasing carbon dioxide levels over the last 70 years, 60 years or so. As of yesterday, no, so as of Monday, we're at 424 parts per million. Just to kind of keep it kind of your head in the numbers a little bit, 424 is way above pre-industrial levels. Yeah, everybody knows about 350.org. We're really, a really nice stable level for the planet would be under 350. So again, we've blown past that level quite significantly. In fact, over the last 60 years, the rate of increase has increased substantially. In other words, our emissions are steadily going up, not down. If you look over at the right-hand side, there was a little bit of a drop during COVID, which was quite nice, but as of 2023, our emissions are at a record high, unfortunately. I like this graph. This is a sort of the left side is a breakdown of a 12-month period, and leading up till this month. And then this on the right is over the last 5 years. It's just a nice visualization of how the biosphere is basically breathing. In the summer, our carbon dioxides go down as the plants, largely the North American sort of land mass of plants breathes in the carbon dioxide. And then in the winter, it tends to go up as that photosynthesis just kind of shuts down. And on the right, you can see how that level has just been steadily pulse hitting up and up and up. Now, we've been really sort of envisaging a lot of different outcomes based on our growth, and we've been hoping for a net zero planet and our society at some point where our carbon dioxide level just kind of levels off. We're envisaging sort of a steady increase in temperatures over the century as carbon dioxide, depending on how much basically we're emitting, how much we're able to turn around that growth. And you can see that this is a really the temperature relationship with carbon dioxide is really highly correlated. Going back hundreds of thousands of years, we can see a nice, correlation between carbon dioxide levels and temperature. And on the right, you can see how really, we're actually off this graph now. This is a few years ago. Our carbon dioxide levels in blue have soared right past that level. One of the things that I did talk about in previous first days is just the idea of tipping points or positive feedback cycles. These are aspects of basically the ecosphere, the biosphere of the planet that are really basically trigger points, things that aspects that can, with warming, with higher carbon dioxide levels, can unleash a rapidly increasing greenhouse effect in temperatures. And there's many of them. There's El Nino problems, ice sheet problems. One of the things that I think is really important is the methane concentrations that are buried deep in the ocean, but also within our permafrost. And so in Canada, we have a large area of permafrost. And as the planet warms, you understand what permafrost is. Basically an ice layer that's just below the surface and obviously above the warmth of the core of the planet. And that contains a lot of organic material, like millions of years of organic material and methane. And if that activates, we're going to get a big release of methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. Very complex system. What we've realized over the last 10 years more and more is that these tipping points are actually interrelated. A very important article came out in Nature in 2019 that basically was a first attempt to really try and put these tipping points together. And what we realized is that there is kind of like a mega tipping point whereby one thing will probably trigger other tipping points. And people realized that all of these together would accumulate in a big increase in greenhouse gas effects. This is kind of an illustration that tries to look at that, whereby carbon dioxide levels are kind of increasing to the right, Stability is going deeper into this graph, and then time is kind of coming towards us. As we come out of sort of the Holocene into the Anthropocene, we're basically dropping into with higher carbon dioxide levels, we're dropping into a destabilization of our ecosystem, and we're looking at sort of planetary threshold whereby we're risk dropping into what is being termed a kind of hothouse Earth, very destabilized, very warm planet because of these things. So a little bit of, I'll say, bad news. Honestly, really, we're realizing it's unpredictable. We used to think that there was a nice sort of response curve that we could, we're going to be basically, based on our emissions, we're going to, be able to predict kind of what kind of planet we're going to be experiencing. But in fact, we're entering into a lot of uncertainty. And when I look back at this graph, which I showed earlier, the interesting point is that you can kind of see that effect in each of these spikes. Now, these are different spikes over different times for different reasons, but every time the carbon dioxide level goes up, it goes up very rapidly, and the temperature goes up very rapidly, and then it takes tens of thousands of years to cool down. So I guess that, this is really as a warning whereby, we have to worry about where we're going to be on this curve, and our carbon emissions, although we kind of expect a nice sort of decreasing curve in terms of the survival of the coral reef, there's a threshold at which it's going to be a very steep curve, and we would never, I don't think we'll ever get to the point of a serious, I guess there's a lot of talk about where this is going to end up, and I think we realize that humans will probably thrive. Like, we're a very adaptable species, but we're probably going to suffer in it to a large extent. Okay, so hothouse Earth. I think I really want to talk about our own emissions, because I think that's where the money lies. Even though it's a bit unpredictable, definitely decreasing our emissions is hugely valuable. So as Canadians, you can see us on the map on the left here, top left, we're emitting more than 10 tons of carbon dioxide per year. We're emitting, we're responsible for that kind of emissions. And so I wanted to sort of give a visualization about that. Like, 10 tons of carbon, 10 tons of anything is a huge amount of emissions. I think I put out about, every 2 weeks, I put out maybe 20, 30 pounds of garbage per year. But if you take 10 tons and divide it per week, you're talking about like hundreds of pounds. So just an equivalency. Now, imagine our own emissions here on the right. I want to do a little experiment.
So, I've already gone this morning.
This is a scale. Everybody see my scale here? Okay, this is my coffee scale. So I don't know if you've thought about your emissions. You've gone this morning, you said?
I biked to work this morning, so yeah, I don't have to think about one.
Well, what about your toilet emission?
There was definitely some.
Was there? Some? Well, okay, I want to do an experiment.
Family-friendly presentation.
I brought my sample in today. Is that okay? So I want to do a little experiment. Now, bear with me here. I've zeroed the scale, and I want to think about our emissions. So, okay, what does it say there?
That's like 250 grams.
250 grams. Okay. So 250 grams. So 250 grams over 300. So that's about, I'm trying to have a total. So 250 grams is a quarter of a kilo. So that's about 100 kilograms. So imagine that I am emitting 100 kilograms of toilet droppings every year, but I'm emitting 10,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So just so you're reassured, this is actually fudge. We're going to share it later.
I'm not sure I want that fudge.
but just to give an imagination, or just to give you a bit of an idea, what kind of emissions, what the mass is. It's very invisible what we're emitting, and I think it's worth thinking. Okay, those droppings, there's probably 100-fold amount of carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide in a gas form is a huge volume. And I hope that sort of launches your part of the talk, Rich.
I think what was presented in previous years was that we've done some work at CHEO now to find out or estimate our annual carbon footprint, and we think it's around like 10,000 tons to like pushing 20,000 tons, sort of 95% confidence interval range. So CHEO has some big emissions. And this isn't surprising. I mean, we all feel guilty about certain things when it comes to climate. I don't know, I definitely feel guilty about flying, even though I still do. I'm going to a conference in Vancouver this summer. There's emissions associated with that. But we have to always remember that healthcare emissions are larger than the whole aviation sector emissions. So this is a huge wake-up call to Curtis has set us up that this is a big societal problem that we have to deal with, and healthcare is going to be an important player in coming up with the solutions. But on a global level, healthcare contributes to about 5% of emissions. But where does that come from? Well, it comes from the same thing as other industries. We have buildings that we have to heat and keep conditioned. But then we also have a lot of consumption and wasted consumption in healthcare. This is a diagram of an artist, I think from Holland, went in for a breast surgery, and she asked the surgical team if she could do an art project on all the waste that came out of one single surgery. And you can see it's just from one surgery, it's a lot of waste. There's been a shift in the last 30 years that we've prioritized sort of ease and disposability within healthcare, and that creates downstream problems, and we can see that when we look at the carbon footprint of our system. So broadly, the idea is that if you look at a healthcare organization, about 1/3 to 50% of the emissions come from operational emissions. So that is carbon dioxide leaving your campus. So that's from running the electricity, burning natural gas to keep the building in the right temperature, use of water, and then there's some gases that come from use of certain medical products, and also vehicles. And then on the other side, we have about 50% to about 2/3 comes from these goods and services emissions. So a given hospital has between 3,000 to 5,000 different unique products, and because we, as the hospital, are the end user of these products, we own the life cycle emissions of those products, even if they were made elsewhere. And that's called the cradle to grave emissions. So what we've outlined in previous talks is operational emissions are quite easy to measure. We've started a research program to try and better measure goods and services emissions. But to get CHEO going on our net zero journey, we've focused in on operational emissions, and we've started to make some investments and changes in that area. And that's part of our CHEO Kick the Carbon KPI, key performance indicator. So I'm now just going to jump into what we've been going for several years now on this CHEO Kick the Carbon journey, and we're going to focus on these operational emissions and how they have changed over the last several years. So we had to start somewhere, so we started there. So back in 2018, 2019, we've taken that year as our baseline year for comparisons moving forward. So here, this is on the y-axis, we have a fiscal year. On the x-axis, on the y-axis, we have the amount of emissions. Obviously, we want to reduce this line. We want to bring it down over time to reduce our emissions and to get our hospital to be towards a net zero. What you can also see is that from year to year, from between years, there's this cyclical pattern. So if people want, they can type in the chat, why do you think CHEO's emissions go up and down and vary in this sort of consistent way year to year?
It's a one word that starts with W, perhaps.
Winter, yes, this is true. Sadly, Ottawa has winter. Conditioning the air, heating it up, getting it to the right humidity level, that all takes energy. So here at CHEO, we have our TransAlta plant just across the way, and it obviously uses gas to heat the steam, and that's a very carbon-intensive form of heating air. Okay, so if we now go to, so we've now got 3 years of data. So this is now brought in the line for 2020, 2021. So, I mean, lots of things, exciting things happened this year. Obviously, the COVID kicked off just before this fiscal year started. But from our perspective, one of the critical things was at this point in May 2020, we hired Faisal to come on board to the facilities team. He was a deeply experienced energy manager. I mean, this is obviously, as a statistician, I have to say this data is confounded. But you can see, like, just as COVID is starting, as we hire our energy manager, there's this big drop in emissions for June of 2020. And it sort of stays lower than some of the past years, which is great. A big reduction, and that was due to the fact that this CHEO old building sort of hadn't been given the TLC it needed behind the scenes in the mechanical room. Faisal arrived, he was able to find some redundancies in how the fans were working. We were conditioning air, kicking it out and reconditioning it again, which was, by simplifying that process, we were able to reduce our emissions. Then next year, 2021, 2022, still in the depths of COVID, didn't do as well as we thought in the winter. It was both a very cold winter, but also at this sort of vulnerable time. One of the fans that we used to bring air in, varying amounts of air into the hospital, that broke. It took 3 months for us to get that piece of equipment replaced because of COVID supply issues. So we sort of performed pretty poorly that winter. But by the time the next winter came around, we'd fixed the fan. Faisal had been in place for a few years. He's managed to build a really amazing team of engineers and facilities folks that have got this culture now of like constantly checking and constantly giving our old building the TLC it needs to make it operate more and more efficiently. So we had a quite efficient, a low amount of emissions that winter. So here, and this is just improving. So last year, 2023, 2024, I think the best improvement here was the engineer. There's that phrase. What is it? A good engineer is a lazy person. So what they did in sort of late 2020, 23 was they automated the variable speed of the fans. This is important because you don't want to constantly bring in 100% of the air. The fans shouldn't be working. You don't want to condition too much air. You want to condition just the right amount of air at different times. Previously, they were having to walk down to the mechanical room, change the fan speed at different times of the day and season. And in 2023, they were able to automate that from the back office. So they were able to put their legs up and just from the keyboard change the fan speed, and that has really reduced the emissions of our hospital so far. There's been many other behind the scenes work done by facilities. They've really been making amazing strides. And when you add this all up over the last several years since 2018, that we've now been able to reduce our operational carbon emissions, so one piece of the pie, by 26%. So we're really proud of that, and we've been able to achieve that with relatively small investment, and it's yielding substantial cost savings for the hospital as well. Now, we're talking about lots of controversial topics today. We're talking about anthropogenic climate change. We're going to avoid discussion of the price on pollution and the carbon tax, and Curtis and I have a debate about what is better, about the original Battlestar Galactica or the more recent Battlestar Galactica. Obviously, I think the more recent one is far superior. But I think there's some similarities between the Battlestar Galactica series and CHEO and how we've been approaching our carbon emissions reductions. So in this sci-fi series, there's this decrepit old ship, and we have this 50-year-old building, and both of them, we are under-resourced, and there needs to be a lot of care and care given to try and keep this ship running and not breaking down at the wrong time, creating huge problems. So far, the facilities have been able to build an amazing team to keep the CHEO ship running and to really work hard to reduce the emissions. What's exciting though is we're now entering a phase where in the next few months, or in the next few weeks actually, we're going to hear of a new large investment that's going to be coming to CHEO that's going to be able to take our emissions reductions to the next step. And bringing in some really important new technologies like heat pumps to parts of the hospital that's going to complement the investment that's going on with the One Door for Care, which is going to be a LEED Silver certified building. Other successes that as you walk around the hospital you might see, if you go into the canteen, you can see the grow tower. There's 2 grow towers at the moment. They've been able to reduce emissions from transport. We're bringing in less greens, and it has a 3-year return on investment. We've also been slowly improving our active transport infrastructure. So here's a picture of our facility, our campus, and over here, so that one of the main bike racks is over here, opposite a margin of the helipad. We have a locked compound, but later in the next few months, there's going to be a new bike rack placed at the Gary Cardiff entrance. That was made on site by our master welder, Jacques, and it's in the shape of a fish, so it's kind of a fun little thing for the kids to look at. Also, somewhere on site that we've just received a bike repair station, and that'll be installed in the coming months as well. Now I'm going to jump into some quick sort of case studies of what's happening over at both research and surgery. Adam's online. I'll just go through the research stuff first. So on a national level, there's an organization called Cascades. They have that are working on in the healthcare and climate change space. Last year, they published a report on greenhouse gas emissions estimations from Canadian healthcare systems. People from CHEO were involved in editing and revising that report for them. More close to home and on Ottawa level, this year the Planetary Health Community of Practice has been launched at the University of Ottawa. People are interested in doing research projects on planetary health, which is a fancy name for climate change and healthcare research. They can attend some of these meetings. They can do a work in progress and get feedback from this team. We've had several publications advocating for better research on how climate change impacts human health and how systematic reviews might benefit from including information on carbon footprints of products, devices, and care pathways. After last year's grand rounds, we turned that talk into a case study, and that was published about what CHEO is doing in the climate space. And the third publication that we had developed a maturity matrix to try and help hospitals simultaneously evaluate their progress on climate mitigation, so how they're reducing their emissions, but in parallel consider how they're trying to make the hospital more resilient. These are two things that have to go on simultaneously, and by being able to see them side by side, you can see where some of the gaps are in terms of your progress. So I'm now going to stop sharing and switch over to Adam.
Adam, you should have what do you call it?
Sharing privileges.
Some of the things.
So you guys see that now?
Yeah, it looks good.
Excellent. Fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Lamoureux. I'm the Director for Critical Care and Surgical Services here at CHEO. Nice to see everybody this morning, and thanks for having me, Richard and Curtis. So I'm just going to quickly take you through some of the green initiatives that we've been able to succeed with in peri-op services here at CHEO. And what I'll say is it all starts with an idea, and these ideas came from one of our frontline nurses, Brenda Armitage in the OR, who after seeing some of the things we were initiating said, hey, what about all the trash we dispose of in the OR, and gave a few examples of that. The peri-op environment typically is about 70% of the landfill waste of a hospital, and so we thought that was a worthy problem to look at. Knowing that it was going to be complex, we reached out to the Telfer MBA program and worked with a management consulting project team. So this is the team and their professor, and they came in and to help us with this challenge. They, over the course of about 3-4 months, pulled together a 120-page report for us that included a current state analysis. They did stakeholder readiness surveys. They benchmarked across Canada and the United States about what other hospitals were doing, and then gave us a set of recommendations with a big strategic rollout plan. So really, they looked at before the OR, in the OR, after the OR, all the different pieces of our landfill garbage production, and really looked at how we could do things differently. They did a whole whack of work. Most of these components in their fishbone diagram ended up being, slides of themselves with multiple pages of text, and a lot of work went into this. They canvassed and kind of dug through our entire perioperative workflow. They really started to hone in on some of those blue wrapped instrument trays. And as they were looking through this, they started to identify what was the main source of waste from the OR. And so it really started to boil down to single-use instruments, packaging, and the blue wrap or the polypropylene wrapping that we historically or traditionally wrap our instrument trays with. They came up with this really interesting strategic planning document where they looked at how things were working strategically, and then they really started focusing us in on some solutions. And so the first solution they looked at was reprocessing, or what we could do to reprocess that traditionally single-use items. I'm flipping through these really quickly, but getting to the projects that we achieved. The second solution they presented to us was recycling, and so looking at the blue wraps and how we could get those blue wrap polypropylene material recycled. And then the third one was get rid of it entirely. So how can you get rid of single use, get rid of blue wrap, and move to other things? As you guys can imagine, a 120-page report. It was overwhelming. It was a lot of work, and we were in the midst of a pandemic. And so thought to ourselves, how are we possibly going to move any of this forward? And we really just thought, let's start with one thing. And so the easiest one was to call Stryker, who happened to be on one of our Mohawk MedBuy contracts, and said, we need your help. We've heard of this solution that you have. Can you come and explain this to us in more detail? And so for free, they arrived on site. And over the course of a few months, explained this process to us. And essentially, they deployed these green buckets into our OR. And throughout our surgical procedures, some of the ligatures, the electronic scalpels, certain trocars, certain catheters and cables, all just get put into this bin. And Stryker then takes them away, sorts through them, reprocesses them, re-inspects them, and then basically sends them back out to be purchased through their distribution channels. And so really all we needed to do was do a bit of training on our staff and put these bins in place. And now this launched in December in 8 operating rooms and 2 procedure rooms at CHEO. And essentially there's a large group of these single-use instruments that are now not going to landfill, but are going back to Stryker to be reprocessed, re-sterilized, and reused, resold, essentially. There is a second layer to this in that we can repurchase these products at a discounted rate. And so that's the next phase of this as we look forward. And that'll be some cost savings for peri-ops, which is great. And then really back to the blue wrap. We in the MBA team's research, they calculated how much of this we actually produce and discard every year. And it was just over 3 tons of this polypropylene material that we discard and send to landfill on an annual basis. And so their 2 pieces, or their 2 strategies, were to either try to figure out how to recycle it, melt it down, turn it into Muskoka chairs was one company's idea. But that would cost money. That would cost us an annual fee in terms of recycling. The other one was to either reduce it or completely replace it with something else. And so reducing it might be how can we convert some of this to either linen wraps or other things? And then the replacement strategy was really interesting, and it was the use of stainless steel containers. The challenge was that was about $400,000 one-time cost, which you can imagine wasn't something that was in my budget. But as we started to look at this big problem, we started to recognize that our central processing technicians were spending a lot of time actually wrapping these instrument trays. They had to be very careful. They had to do it the proper way. And it took some time to actually do the wrapping itself. And we were finding SRSs and some challenges with torn wrappers. And so they would go into the OR, they'd come back and say, sorry, we tore the wrapper, we need to go back, it needs to all be re-sterilized, repackaged. And so a lot of rework, a lot of efficiency waste. And then we got a request from the ministry to submit ideas to a surgical innovation and efficiency funding grant. And so one of these was, well, if we want to be more efficient, then wrapping all these items and redoing the work might be something we can focus on. And so we applied for funding in July of last year. We got funding shortly thereafter. And in January, February, and March of this year, we purchased just under $400,000 worth of these stainless steel sterilization containers. Tremendous amount of work by our MDRD team to convert all of our trays into these containers, but the goal has been achieved. And as of this month, CHEO has now eliminated 99% of the blue wrap use or polypropylene wrap use at CHEO. So we've gained efficiencies in MDRD. It's much easier to package and then just snap the lid closed for sterilization versus the multi-layer wrapping protocols. We eliminated the rework due to wrap tearing. That's not a problem anymore. These stainless steel containers should last us 30 to 40 years. We've stopped purchasing these polypropylene wraps, and of course, we're now no longer contributing 3 tons of plastic material to our landfills on an annual basis. So lots of success. We're really proud of it. A tremendous amount of work by the team. It all started with an idea, and then the other piece is really needed to bring together a team to really think through the priority setting and how we're going to do this. And that's the end of my slides. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Adam. The share our slides here. I just want to point out this is like amazing example of 2 of the 3 R's, and really the biggest 2. So everybody knows the reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce is like number 1. I have a slide here of these amazing boxes as well, because there's an amazingly rapid sort of greenhouse gas return. Obviously stainless steel is not easy to make, but when you talk about the tons of plastic that we are saving every year, in about a year we're going to set up totally eat up that carbon footprint and never emit again. Basically, I think there's sort of 10,000 uses if I remember correctly on these. And then the reusing, like that Striker project's an amazing example as well. And I think this has been a huge breakthrough. I think I wanted to say, Adam, you've done this all on your own, and I mean we've cheered you on, but you've been really instrumental in pushing this forward. That just brings me to sort of like we've been doing a lot at the Green Team. There's been a lot of activities. What can you do? And I have a little list of 6, and I'm hoping that you'll pick 3, maybe write them down, memorize them. I think one of the most important things that you could do. Sorry, my thing is not advancing. Is I really sort of pay attention to the stuff that you use every day, and I put here follow the IPAC recommendations. These are changing. I think I've taken some liberties to take some screenshots off the IPAC PPE module that I had to do every 2 years, and just to sort of point out that gloves and proper protection are important, but they shouldn't be overused. Really use them for the times that you need them. We've changed our mask requirements. I think some of the things that we can do is just buy reusables. We have sorry, trouble to advance. Okay, good. And so reusable visors is an option. These are the ones that I got. You can see Curtis's choice here at $8. They include a bifocal for the elderly eyes. Second thing I think you should consider is stop using stuff that's really useless. And we got rid of exam table paper 12 years ago now in the emergency department. It's the kind of thing that I think it's kind of nice to have that sort of visual that looks like an untouched exam table paper. Always kind of gives a feeling of cleanliness, but in reality, it doesn't do anything to prevent infection. You really do have to wipe down the bed with a very environmentally safe Oxyvir mixture. It's much better than like the blue wraps generating tons and tons of wasted paper every year. This is a study actually that a student of mine did. We looked at basically where people put their hands when they're on exam table paper. Believe it or not, this is like one of the first studies ever done on exam table paper. If you go into any search engine and look for exam table paper studies, basically nobody's ever done it because they've realized, I think because they realized it just never did anything. So this is one of the first studies that's going to come out next month, where we basically show that exam table paper is not protecting us from the main vector, which is our hands. Same thing, basically looking at the carbon footprint of exam table paper. Really hope we still have a few holdouts. I'm really hoping that we can move on that at the hospital. This title is Be Open to Change. So some things that are coming, we're hoping to be recycling some of these products. Maybe we get reusable products in the future. I've been talking to some startups that are looking at reusable IV bags. These plastics have a very huge footprint, and it would be really nice to get rid of them, reduce the use of them at the very least. But being open to change is about, accepting that sometimes there might be a little bit of a hurdle to sort of get used to a new product or to reduce things. Getting rid of exam table paper in the emergency department, there were a few people that were a little bit reticent. I'm not sure, it's maybe a sign of the times, but I think people didn't sort of see, I think it's up to us to really communicate that we have safety in mind, we have, the economics in mind, and really we're trying to make changes that are for the best, given all of the factors. Yeah, this is one change. We also got rid of Daryl Water. This is so this part of the slide is just the point of the slide is just to really take environmental costs, footprint, all the costs really beyond carbon footprint, and bring it into the part of the discussion. And maybe not, discussing it at every rounds, but have it in the back of your mind that there's a financial cost to things, that there's obviously safety issues and patient outcome issues, but environmental cost is out there, and that it's a bit of a meme or a overstated, but the do no harm thing. Healthcare is doing harm, as Richard pointed out, and I think it's worthwhile thinking, okay, when I'm doing tests, this picture here is in the emergency department when I got the nurse to put out all the stuff they use to take a simple blood draw. And I realized that just drawing the blood, that's not including all the processing, has a big footprint. And, when we think about it's very hard to calculate the exact footprint of that, but probably, kilograms of carbon dioxide are generated. It has to be part of the discussion, and it's not easy to take it into account, like the actual impact down the road. But I think we have to somehow bring that in. And now this is obviously going up a little bit more, but if you're interested, and I think I'd like people to know that the Green Team has built a very robust process now for really taking on projects. And if you wanted to take on some kind of sustainability QI project, we're here to help. We have administrative support. We have very knowledgeable people who've been working very hard on a lot of things, and we have funding. We have some funding. This is the announcement for the latest Kick the Carbon contest. That was this year's contest, but really at any time we're available to help and to also bring things forward. If you wanted a little bit of a startup funding or something, we could work with you to try and get a little bit of a process for that. The last thing, join the team. I have reached out to us. This is our sustainability steering team. Since Faisal's on the left there, has come onto the team, and at about the same time, really the administration, including a lot of the senior executives, are on the team now and buying into this direction because it is part of our strategic direction as a hospital. I just want to acknowledge that these Richard and these other 4 members of the team have been instrumental, and over the last 5 years, we've worked very hard together, and the big success is are large part really are due to the strong team work that we've been able to get together on. Okay, so that's about it. Thank you, everybody.
We should have about 10 minutes for questions.
Yeah. Tour de force, guys. Amazing. If people want to throw questions into the chat box there, that would be great. Roger wants to know if they can do what they did. You did. Can they do that in an emergency as well? Is that been a discussion that you guys have had yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I put a brief summary in the chat there. But essentially our Mayo trays, our large procedure trays, don't fit easily in these stainless steel containers. And so the work that needed to be undertaken was to really kind of redesign the procedure trays, redesign the Mayo trays, which becomes a large scope project. So it's something that's on our radar.
Okay.
What we will be doing is converting from the blue plastic wrap to the linen wraps to avoid the landfill piece. So that's phase one. It's coming soon.
Okay. I mean, the real problem is the Tupperware lid problem. You managed to track all the lids for the rubber container, but we can talk about that later. But is it generalizing to other hospitals? I mean, it'd be great to go to emergency, but it'd be great to spread it across Ontario and Canada. If you can go and sort of promulgate the idea, that would be wonderful. I'm sure there's other questions, but if people could just throw in the chat box as well, ideas that Curtis and Richard and Adam should consider. I mean, Curtis gave us 6, but if you have ideas to throw in the chat box, which we could do, we're not thinking of, that would be great as well.
One thing I forgot to mention is Earth Day is next week. We're having a ceremony. We're celebrating accomplishments on Wednesday morning.
Right.
Anybody's interested coming down, you'll be able to see live that the bike stations that we are installing. The fish will be there, and also the repair station will be live. And we have a new ride sharing app. We're having a little sorting contest where basically you can win surprises for sorting. Yeah, a bunch of stuff going on. Alex Munter will be down there starting at I think around 10 or so. I'm not sure actually. There'll be announcements.
It's the same day as Resident Research Day, I think.
Is it? Yeah.
Okay, the important Alex. That's great. my one thought was, do we need to gown as much? Sometimes we may not need to put the gowns on because I'm not sure how much is transferred that way, but I'm sure ID and IPAC is going to come from my head with that comment. Dare has a question.
Hi guys, for some reason I can't turn my video on. I think Alex
No loss.
But maybe that's helping reduce emissions. My question was about like when it comes to the change at the hospital is clearly doable. It's often takes some time. What do you see as the biggest barrier, particularly around sustainability with getting with making a change? Like, is it overcoming policy? Is it overcoming law? Like, what barriers could people anticipate going into a sustainability QI project?
I think one of the challenges is in the healthcare sector versus other sectors, we have to worry about safety. And it's not just safety, but there is the administrative load to make changes is high. And to sort of overcome that, you need really good administrative support, or you need people that are really good at pushing through changes. And having that administrative support is really vital. So at the moment we have Heather has been working with us 1 or 2 days a week. And that's been really important for pushing through changes, because it's easy for things to slow down. Like it's hard to come to the decision as to what to do, to find the right strategy and prioritize the right action. But then the actual implementation can be slow.
There's a lot of regulation in healthcare. There's a lot of obviously requirements for infection control and safety. I agree with Richard. That's for sure. That's a big hurdle. We do have really good buy-in from administration at this point. I think that's been really good. But it's complicated work, right? I told you about the exam table paper thing. it was a nice little study, but to really do an infection control study is a big deal.
Part of the role of the green team is to provide the support to individuals in their like niche area of the hospital to help them overcome some of those barriers. They don't have to, an individual shouldn't have to relearn the processes every time. There should be a process to help support them and expedite it.
I still think bringing in the conversation though, like I think we're reluctant to talk about competing priorities, but I think we've gotten to the point there where climate change really is a big competing priority for health.
And I think coming out of the pandemic, previously this idea of like resilience and supply chain issues was very abstract, but now there is a huge benefit to having more resilient processes if we're using less. If the supply chains start to shut down, we're going to be more resilient going forward.
Yeah.
Great.
Can I just quickly follow up on that? Do you think, I mean, I've done a couple of projects where that have been either stalled out or delayed because of what you're mentioning, either safety risk or there's a regulation. Do you think times are changing where it felt like the onus was on the person trying to make change to prove definitively that there wasn't going to be an increased risk, which takes time? Takes an incredible amount of time and money to research that every change is a reasonable one. Is that shifting a bit, or what? How much proof does one need?
Probably different hospitals have different cultures, and I think sometimes some hospitals have to be more experimental, and then the more conservative hospitals can then point to, oh, it's been implemented here in our same jurisdiction, so it sort of takes the pressure off. But ideally, we all have to take up the load and start experimenting with solutions that are going to help save the planet.
Matt Speckert is asking a question that's occurred to me. Do the muffins need to be in those freaking plastic containers? 3 in the morning, I lie awake.
We're working on that. We're working on it. We have a very engaged cafeteria person. Bernice Wolf's amazing.
Right.
She was kind of cornered on COVID on that. So that we're working.
Okay.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
do a prospective trial where for 1 week we don't put the containers in and we see if infections spike. Something like that.
But it's a really interesting example, right? Because we've had this brought to us so many times.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
But if you compare that to the blue wraps,
yes,
blue wraps, we're talking about 3 tons.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I know.
It's funny how we often bring our lens of like personal domestic sustainability to healthcare sustainability, and there's all these huge processes behind the scenes that we don't see. And prioritizing those differences is important. That said, changing that has a huge optics effect.
Okay.
It's just crazy.
I mean, on a macro scale, it's coal energy generation in China, which is really getting us. If you guys can include that. So Brianna Eppingham, the crowd has gone crazy, is asking for reusable cups back in the Oasis. Which is great.
It's coming. That's coming too. These are on our radar, and people have been asking for it. So it's
hasn't it been improved?
It's it's a long story, but it's coming. It's sort of, there's some hurdles. It has technically been approved. So
okay. 3 to 5 years from now, what are the changes that you think we can do? How is CHEO different 3 to 5 years from now?
From now, I think energy is going to be it's continuing to be a great success. Like Richard hinted at, there's some stuff coming that's amazing. In 3 to 5 years, I think the NHS has got a really cool plan. The National Health Service for England has got a really cool plan to go to net zero. I think we're going to be really working hard on products, manufacturing, shipping, packaging. That's going to be our next thing. That's our whole scope 3. We're talking about scope 3. It's going to be good.
Yeah, it comes from both ways. Like both we have to do our bit, but the places that we're sourcing it from should be providing better options.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, what a warm, uplifting, brilliant CHEO Grand Rounds, guys. I think it has to do with my chairing personally, but it was an amazing job, and Adam, yeah,
Want some
well
fudge?
done all.
Alex, I'll
Yeah.
bring you some fudge.
When
Actually,
you,
I have
when
a
you
lot of
get
it.
the
I have,
people
actually,
haven't had
I have
breakfast
like
yet.
three schools here.
This is the
You know, I'll drop you one. Bye.
first time mock feces has been presented in Grand Rounds ever. Congratulations.
It's
Bye,
a good
guys.
sculpture. Are you from Bristol? You're not from Bristol?
All right. We should start a podcast. Well done, guys. I'll put that away. Goodbye.